Okay, here we are then with Lee Charles, fantastic martial artist, great guy, and then obviously very famous now, especially for Gangs of London, which has had hit reviews all over the country, all over the world. I binge watched it, I think, in 2 or 3 days, and yeah, it was just awesome. So, how are you, mate? You're right.
I'm really good, really good. I mean, life's been a bit crazy this last couple of weeks since the series landed.
Yeah.
I've been inundated with messages and just so much positive feedback off the back of Gangs. It's been, it's been phenomenal. So I'm good. And sort of, I know this lockdown's all a bit crazy, but I'm enjoying the downtime and getting to spend as much time as I can with my son and sort of recharging my batteries for when we all resume back to. It's not going to be normality, but when we resume back to doing what we
some semblance of normality.
Yeah, a resemblance of what we did before.
Yeah, it's funny. Every single person that I've spoken to, like during this whole martial view thing, everyone has said that they've kind of enjoyed a bit of the downtime compared to their whole hectic lifestyle before. Like, it's obviously awful what's going on, but for them, it's like, yeah, it's just a little bit of calm time, process.
I think people need to realise, you're never going to have this again. It's like being back at school and having 6 weeks holiday. It is.
Some holidays, yeah.
It is, and you sort of like, and I think it's given people time to. I mean, you've got your different types of people, haven't you? But I think the people that strive to be something else and be more themselves, it's give them time to sort of like sit there and be creative and think, what do I need to do? What once this is all over, what steps do I need to take to push forward and to excel myself, because we all go a bit stale with what we do. We all get into a routine, and we all end up sort of, every now and then you have a spike and you go, right, I need to change this, need to change that. Whereas, now you've sort of had, we're into our 8th week, I think it is.
Yeah.
So we're into our, coming to the end of the 8th week of being in lockdown. And I just think, for me, I know what I want to do, where I want to go after it, what I'm going to chase, where I'm going to go forward. And I think I've just, I've loved having the time with my boy, and, and spending, I'm just spending really, really quality time with him and seeing him grow into, this young boy. He's gone from this like baby to this young boy, like really quick.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's been phenomenal. I'm still training, still doing the things I like to do. I'm having a lot more time. The amount of time people I've been sort of, I've spoke to during this lockdown that I've sort of, not like fell out of touch with, but you're that busy, you just don't have a chance to do it. And I've sat here and, like we're having a conversation now, and I've just had so many conversations with people, and it's just been really good to reconnect. As you know from my social media, I'm quite antisocial, and, I just like sort of my own world. I like to sort of, but I've reconnected with a lot of the guys I used to fight for Great Britain with, and a lot of the guys I used to fight in the circuits with. Then I've had some of the guys that I work and film with. I've been reconnecting with them and speaking to them. Since Gangs have come out, I've had like so many celebrities like message me over that scene and stuff, and it's just been nice. I've sort of like rekindled relationships with people and reconnected with them and stuff, and then I've had this influx of new people like get in touch because of Gangs. So for me, it's just it's. I think you've got to make the most of a negative situation, and you've got to look for the positives in it. I think if you sit there and dwell on it, you're going to end up in this oblivion of
you spiral, don't you?
Yeah, you are, and drinking and everything else, and I just think for me, it's been the longest Sunday in the history of ever. It just felt like this last 8 weeks has been one big Sunday.
Yeah, bank holiday's been nothing anymore. It's like, that's a bank holiday.
I'm like, what day is it? I did my online training the other day, and I said it was Thursday for 3 days. I was like, and everyone was like, it's Wednesday.
It's Groundhog Day.
I got 1 days right, so. But yeah, I mean, you just got to use this time as a positive, and also, I think it's, for me, I've had a lot of time to reflect on things and, things that have gone on in the past, and obviously, things that are going on at the moment at the current situation, and then, where I want to go to, how I want to plan to get to where I'm going. And it's just been great. It's been really good to have the opportunity to do it. I mean, I know we're in this bad time, but I don't think anyone, if you haven't used this time to be creative and to be productive, and I think you've probably wasted like the most important time of your life, because we're all sat there. You can sit there and dwell and say, obviously us actors and martial arts instructors and stuff, we're all self-employed and it's been quite tough. But then you just go, do you know what? Let's move forward. Let's think about, productively what we want to do, and just plan for it. And that's all I've done. I've used the time constructively, and hopefully at the end of all this madness, my plan will come out and I'll be running like Ren and Stimpy and take over the world.
Amazing, cool. Yeah, we want to hear more about that then. Let's start way back then when you first started training then. So we'll go right back to the start. What got you started training in the first place? So why and what?
For me, it's the whole cliche of, Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
I was 5 years old. My nan and my granddad, were the first people in the family to get a VHS recorder. So for those listening to this who don't know what a VHS recorder was, it was probably about this big, and when you press rewind, the whole house shook. But they were the first people to get it. It was on like a remote control with a wire and stuff. And the first two films that the whole family come round to watch and share this moment together. It was like, oh my God, there's technology. And the first two films that we got from an old video shop called the Jolly Roger,
right,
was The Big Boss, Bruce Lee, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
That's a good two films to start with.
Yeah. So they were the first two films. So I'm 5. They stick The Big Boss on, boom, that's it. I'm obsessed with it. Just, I just like, it was just, you got this like charismatic Chinese guy on the screen doing stuff that I'd never ever seen done before. And I think, it's probably like the kids watching, like, I don't know, growing up watching Power Rangers and watching all stuff now. And I just had this like iconic guy that was in front of me. And I remember there's a scene where Bruce comes into the house and there's loads of blood on the floor and he slips. And at that time, my mum said I was sick. So it was obviously
right,
the size of the blood and stuff.
Yeah.
But it didn't put me off. And I literally from that day become so obsessed with Bruce Lee. I was quite lucky to grow up in the era that I did. And, coming from like the 70s into the 80s, Bruce Lee was still massive. He was everywhere. Growing up, every martial art magazine. I mean, it was probably still like that until Martial Art Magazine stopped a few years ago. Every magazine that you picked up, he was still on the front cover. He's the most iconic martial artist and the most influential martial artist that's ever lived.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just like, all my mates were getting mongoose BMXs. I'm walking around in kung fu suits and slippers with rubber nunchuckers on the inside. And
good man.
I was just obsessed. So my dad's put me into karate, Shotokan karate. Back when I used to train, you didn't have the variety that you've got nowadays. Yeah. So now, everyone's just spoiled. And not just spoiled in terms of being able to go to clubs, but spoiled in terms of this, the internet and having the accessibility to be able to research stuff. We had to buy magazines, books. You were going out there every week getting DVDs, Shannon O'Brien, Project A, Japanese Story. We learned from watching, and then you go out and batter your mates outside. It was like that's all we had. But I started in Shotokan, and I did Shotokan for a few years and years and years. I got my black belt in Shotokan and stuff. I was quite lucky because my dad was a bodybuilder and he used to do karate as well. So like the people that I was around were like Terry O'Neill.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
The great Terry O'Neill, who until I was about 23, I didn't even speak to because I was that in awe of who he was.
Sure. Yeah.
And my Sifu, Master Brian McKinney. So I had, these like karate guys and kung fu guys and everything around me. And back then you didn't have that variety. I think it was like karate or judo. I think there was like limited traditional jiu-jitsu schools, the old Japanese style. And then as it sort of progressed and developed, sort of taekwondo schools come in. If you wanted to do kung fu, you know 90% of the time you were going to Chinatown. You're having to go to, you know, there's a guy over in Liverpool called, I think it was Jimmy Chan, who was a friend of my dad's, who run a place over there. So I was like, I had this, you know, I had all this around me, you know, all these people around me. You know, I go to Terry's shop in Liverpool, and out in the back, I'd be there as a little kid, and you go in, there's like ninja stars and swords and everything everywhere. But then it was this like, it was like, you know, you could watch like an old 80s old karate movie or kung fu movie, and you'd have this shop front, and then the door would open, it was a dojo in the back.
Yeah.
And all the guys, you know, in the middle of the day screaming, and I was just like fascinated as a kid, you know, it was just like taking me back. So yeah, you know, I started off with that. And then I slowly progressed, and I never set out to do karate. Like I love karate. It's given me my foundations for who I am and what I wanted to do. But I always wanted to do kung fu because Bruce Lee did kung fu.
Sure.
So when my dad's friend, Master McKinney, who was my Sifu for many years, when he set up the Chinese Wushu Research Institute, I went over there and made the transition into Chinese martial arts and started learning the Wushu and stuff. And then I just, you know, I was obsessed with Bruce Lee. I used to read all his books. I used to buy. I mean, I've got thousands of books. I used to buy anything. I used to read it. It didn't matter what martial art was on, because I read Bruce Lee once said, "Take what's useful and discard the rest." Yep. So for me, I literally took that as for me. That was my life. So it was like, you know, it was like, right, I'm going to do this system. I'm going to try this system. You know, and you know, I've probably, you know, I've got belts in Taekwondo, Karate, Shotokan Karate, Kempo Karate, kickboxing, sport karate, Wushu. Yeah, I don't know, something else. So like for the whole time, I just used to train, and I've done like a boxing, Thai boxing, and the sandal. For me, I tried to do everything I could possibly do, and just take the essence of what I was able to adapt to within that system, and then bring it in, you know. And then obviously, you know, as my career went, I was one of the youngest ever BKA sort of quest for champions. So I literally, my instructor come up and sort of went, right, you graded on the day, and threw me in the seniors. And then I remember I was like fighting this guy, and in my head it was like a comic book like moments. This guy's like massive, and I'm this like teenager standing there in front of him, and I was like 11 stone. I was wet, just had this like big NSYNC Justin Timberlake hair. Nice. And he was like, I think he was like a 450 degree. And I beat him. You know, I went on to beat him in the final and stuff. And then I sort of got a. I sort of liked the competitive side. I was never naturally gifted in martial arts. I always worked. My work ethic was always to work as hard as I can. And then I just started competing in kickboxing. Sort of like made the transition. I think everyone made the transition over to kickboxing sort of in the late 80s, early 90s, and you know, Van Damme changed everything, didn't he? You know, as soon as Van Damme come onto the screen, everyone wanted to be a kickboxer and do the box
head kicks,
and throw helicopter, you know, 360s. So I made the transition to kickboxing, and then I sort of got quite good at that. And then I went on to fight for Great Britain and stuff, ended up winning 6 world titles. And yeah, you know, just, you know, although I was known for my kickboxing, my recognition in kickboxing is what I was known for, and my fighting and stuff. Yeah. But my love for traditional art is massive. You know, I think everyone should have a foundation, and I think, you know, I always say to people, even now, you know, there's a difference between, and this is where people get confusing. There's a difference between a martial artist and a fighter. Yes, they're two complete different kettles of fish. Yeah. You know, a martial artist, it's for life. Martial artist, it's how you live your life. How, you know, the martial arts for me has given me skills that nothing else in the world could ever give me. You know, it's given me the discipline and stuff. It's given me the drive. It's given me the determination. It's setting this set of skills that has made me just go on to sort of be who I am. And then the fighting side, you know, I'm quite lucky because I had both sides. But the fighting side, you know, your fighting side is just fighting. You just want to fight, and the longevity within that is not as long. And I find that a lot of fighters, after they finish their fight career, they don't continue with the martial arts. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think they're just two different kettle of fish. But yeah, I mean, you know, where would it be? I don't even know what I'd be doing if it didn't do the martial arts. And I think for a lot of, you know, I say to my students and my kids all the time that I teach, you know, I grew up on a council estate. I was one of 4 kids. My mum and dad were young. They didn't have much, but I had martial arts. Yeah. And my martial arts is who and what has made me who I am today. And because of having that, it taught me a set of skills and perseverance that you can't learn anywhere else.
Yeah. Perfect. Great. Did you find it hard then to transition from kind of going to the traditional styles over then to the Chinese, so like the wushu, then over to the kickboxing, then the Muay Thai, because a lot of different kind of arts in there. Was it an easy transition, or was it difficult to kind of get your head in a different space?
I think the hardest for me, I remember the hardest period was going from the Shotokan to the wushu.
Okay.
Because obviously, you know, Shotokan's very hard. It's very
rigid.
You know, whereas the wushu is like, and then your swords like doing cartwheels and carving up, and I was like, wow, what's going on here? And it was trying to go from that solid foundation to go into being fluid and getting that softness, you know, with the execution at the end of the softness.
Sure.
So I think the hardest part was that transition. And then I think once I broke that transition to that, I think everything else then become sort of natural. I was able to then adapt. But I think that first initial transition from doing the Shotokan to going into do the wushu, I think that was the hardest part for me. In terms of the fighting styles, I always thought it was Bruce Lee. So, so I just, you know, when I was throwing techniques, it was all, you know, it was always dragon whips its tail, you know. It's sort of that. So for that side of me, in terms of the fighting and stuff, I was always quite nifty, and I was always on my feet because, you know, Bruce Lee never believed in being static and being standing still. And I took like, you know, and then my idols are like Benny the Jet, and you know, you know, watching, you know, like I say, you know, like growing up in the 80s was amazing. Like it was
for action,
it was just everything, you know. Even like, you know, it was when obviously the PKA went over, and then it turned into the kickboxing, and you know, and you develop stars like, you know, Benny the Jet, Donald Dragon Wilson, you know, I think Bill Wallace was still competing at the time, you know, and you had the likes of Dennis Alexio, and you had like these I can't even. They were like gods, weren't they? Like they were
huge names, weren't they?
Yeah,
huge.
They were. And at that time, it was massive. It was massive. You couldn't pick up a magazine. And then, obviously, in this country, you know, you had Alfie Lewis. You know, like Bob Sykes, and you know, Chris Bowie, Joe Turney. Joe Turney, used to love watching Joe Turney. Peter O'Para. And you sort of had these figures that, like, you just, you know, week in, like month in, month out, you could read about, you could watch, you know, I was, you know, my dad was buying me all the videotapes of like all the old kickboxing fights, but then you had like the movies that were coming out as well, the action movies. I just think at that time, it was like, you know, we were quite spoiled, even though it was hard to get hold of.
Yeah,
you sort of like I think now, because everything is sort of accessible, easily accessible, like they lose the
it's a bit of the magic, isn't it?
Yeah, they lose that essence. Whereas back then, like every week, you'd wait for the new martial art movie to come out in the video shop. Yeah. You know, you had your 50p waiting to hire, you know, waiting to hire it, and you know, Jackie Chan, you know, you look at what's it called, Golden Harvest at that time, and the movies that they were popping out. Yeah, and then you had Cannon on, you know, that started bringing them out, and it was just phenomenal. It was a phenomenal time to get into it. Yeah.
When did you decide to start competing then? And was there a reason for it? Just a natural?
No, I competed as a kid. I was never I competed in karate as a kid because I think back then it was sort of like, yo, get on the mat and you're gonna sort of do it.
Yeah.
And I did a few tournaments as a kid. I think the Karate Kid had a lot of influence in it and a lot of stuff.
Get your crane kick out.
Even trying to do the crane.
Yeah.
But you know, yeah, I think back then, you know, it was a natural progression. I think that you sort of made that transition over, and then I remember winning a tournament over in Liverpool, and I was like a traditional karate guy, and we were fighting freestyle guys, and I ended up winning the tournament, and I ended up getting a lot of support from everyone because I think it was only about 12, 13, 14 at the time, but I got like loads of support from these other clubs because like I felt like the Karate Kid, I felt like the outsider in the little white suit, and I picked all these like really good guys, and my dad was on the mat with me at the time. My dad was coaching me and stuff. And it was just like it was sort of like a little bit of a magical moment. And then I had a few years out because I played football. I went on to play football to a really high level and stuff. I still continued to train, but I didn't compete because obviously the conflict of interest within them both. And then once I had an injury, I had an injury in football, and I just thought, you know what? I come back and I was playing like semi-professional, and I didn't really like it. I lost the love for it, and I just didn't enjoy it because I'd had my heart set on playing at a high level. And I think, and then just one morning, I remember waking up, and I was the girl I was with at the time, and I was like, "There's a competition in Manchester today," and she's like, "What? What are you on about?" I was like, "There's a competition in Manchester. I read it in a martial art magazine," and she's like, "Yeah." I went, "I want to go. Just have a go."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Oh, I just want to have a go again." So I went. It was the WK Nationals. I think it was 1999 or 2000 or something. It was.
Yeah.
And after having all that time out, and I competed, and I come third. I had a bloodbath. I got battered. I got battered. But you know, I've got that never say die spirit. And I remember Joe Turney being a referee, and he just used to let leather get flu everywhere. And I come third, and then I got the opportunity to fight for the Great Britain team because it was the nationals and stuff. Went over to Prague, fought in the World Championships that year, got silver, and then that was it. I just thought, oh, I'm actually better than I thought I was at this, and you know, but I was never naturally gifted, if that makes sense. Like I always believe hard work outdoes talent when talent doesn't work hard. You can be the most talented person in the world, but if you're the hardest worker in the room, you know, and I have that attitude where I never give up. Like I never give up. If like the amount of times I got beat, I used to see it as being one step closer to winning. So every time I got beat, I didn't go, "Oh, I'm being beat again." I'd go, "Right, okay, that's out the way. I'm now a little bit closer to winning." Yeah. And I used to learn that way, and I've adapted that mentality to everything that I do.
Where do you think that mentality came from? Do you think it was family upbringing, just training?
Martial arts, from martial arts training. I think, you know, when I started martial arts when I was 6, and I didn't get my black belt until I was 18.
Yeah.
I was a brown belt for about 6 years, which is the hardest thing in the world. But
so close.
But the reason being is they never used to grade to a senior grade when I was a kid. Like when I was a kid, they never used to grade you unless you were an adult.
Yeah.
There was some clubs that did, you know, and it was persevering. It was their own personal choice for them to be like that. So I used to see people coming into the club as a white belt and getting to black belt before I'd even graded again. Yeah, and I was like, you know, and I think that taught me a lot of. It taught me. I mean, one, you know, the chances of getting someone to do that nowadays would be next to nil. Yeah. No, you know, just to have that perseverance and desire. But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot of discipline. You know, I was, you know, like I said before, I had these figureheads around me, and my dad was a big influence on me, and my granddad was a big influence on me, and I had these people around me that helped sculpt me into who I was, and I just have that attitude where, you know, I believe in that the only person in the world that can stop you achieving anything you want is you. Nobody else. It's you. It's down to you. you know, because you're the one that gives up on yourself. Nobody else, you know, you can't rely on anyone in this world except yourself. You know, and it's down to you. It's down to you how much hard work you put in, how many times you keep going. And, you know, and I think you have this moment where people just quit. You know, you have this, you know, you know yourself when you're teaching and you're like, right, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do this. And they go, oh, I can't do that. And you're like, you haven't even tried. It's like, you don't tell me you can't do something when you haven't tried. And unfortunately, that's systematically put into us when we're children from when you're parents. And it's not down to it's not down to your parents' fault or the way you've been brought up. But from the minute you're born, you like, and you start learning, you're told, don't do this, don't do that. You can't do this, you can't do that. So as soon as someone tells you to do something that's a little bit difficult, everyone just automatically goes, can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, right, we need to break that mold. We need to
conditioned response.
Yeah, it is. We need to change that mold so that you then start thinking different. And I don't know. I just become that way, I think. And you know, it's sort of like I just had, like I said before, I had that desire to want to be Bruce Lee. And it was just like, it was that burning desire within myself that sort of never let me quit on myself. Even now, times get hard sometimes, and you're going for acting jobs, and you know, one minute you're finishing on a big movie, then the next minute you don't have work for ages, and psychologically it's hard. You know, it's a hard response to go, oh, how come I've just worked on that and now I've got this. Sure. But it's down to having that mental attitude and perseverance, where it's like, do you know what? I've knocked before and I've been turned away, so I'll just keep knocking again. Yeah. And then eventually someone's going to go, yeah, of course, you know, it's here, you know, come in. And so, yeah, it's just, I just have that never say die attitude, where I just keep going. And I'm a firm believer in myself. And I try and that is one of the key principles that I try and give to all the kids that come to my dojo, is that, you know, if you want to succeed in life, it's down to you. It's down to the choices that you make. It's down to having that positive attitude, and it's down to working hard. You've got to work hard. You know, you can't, I think we live in a society now where everyone thinks they're entitled. They've got this sense of entitlement. Yeah. And it's like, and I think it's wrong. And I think it's like, it's set in schools in terms of, you know, now, so when you're academically good at something, you get praise and you get put into groups and everything else. Yeah. When you're physically good at something, they've took that away from you. You're not allowed to be good at something no more physically. Yeah. So if it's like all the races, like no one wins. I'm like, no one wins. I'm like, you know, so what you're doing there is you're teaching. Like I was a physical student. I was good at every sport. I was creative with art. I was good at art, and I was good with the English language and stuff. Yeah. But everything else, I wasn't. You know, I was average. Sport, I excelled in everything. Everything as a kid. So now you're taking that away from kids. I'm like, seriously? I'm like, so you're telling me that because they're physical at something, they now can't be rewarded for it? Yeah. But if they're academically good at something, you're going to give them all that praise. Yeah. I'm like, you're systematically bullying kids, and you're systematically taking confidence away from kids, and you're programming kids to go, well, there's no point in me doing that no more because I don't win. Mm. So I think it's wrong what the schools do. I think they're doing that. I think you've got to have that, you know, life. Me personally, life is about winning. From the minute you're born, it's about winning. And I don't mean that in terms of like winning medals or winning things. I mean winning life. Yeah. Like in order to succeed at something, in order to challenge yourself and everything else, you need to win at life. You need to push forward, and you need to do the things that you do. And that, for me, that is a key principle. And I try and have that ethos. So to then try and take it away from kids in school, I'm like, you know, I'm hoping that at some point it switches back, and you're allowing to reward the people who are good at what they do physically.
Yeah, fingers crossed. When did you decide then to become a coach? Was it a natural thing to go into coaching? Were you pushed into it? Did you like doing it? Or?
Yeah. Do you know what? I think when you get to a certain point in martial arts, I think, you know, I think it's part of your growth. I think you get to a certain point where you start to understand, like, it's about you. Even when you teach, it's still about you. Because I find out I learned so much more about who I was as soon as I started coaching. So it's like I used to start teaching. I was teaching at my instructor school, Master Brian McKinney's and stuff, and I was taking classes there. And I could find myself sort of like learning these other skills that come in, you know, in being able to spot, you know, people whose ability wasn't very good. Then you start teaching in different methods. So understanding how one person moves to the other, and being able to sort of, not everyone takes instruction in the same way. You know, some people take it visually, some take it through listening. You know, and you sort of having to deal with them things. And I think the minute I started teaching, I started to blossom as a martial artist, and I started to understand more about what I'd been doing, like, as well. And I just love it. And you know, I think one of the most important jobs, you know, in the world is being a parent. I don't think there's a bigger important job than being a parent, and having the responsibility to teach these kids and teach them a set of skills and a set of ethics that could set them up for life. You know, I think every martial arts instructor needs to understand that they're in this you sort of become this like role model to these kids. And I think, and personally for me, you know, the amount of kids that I've seen over the years that grow up into adults, and then they come up to me on the street and are like, listen, thanks for that years ago. You know, I had like a job interview, and I remember like this grading that we did, and it helped me get through it. And you sort of like, you know, I had one of my students who went on to be a fighter pilot for the RAF. You know, and I helped him lose the weight and stuff. And I remember I trained him, and he come to me, and I helped him lose the weight and to get in, because you have to be a certain weight to be in the planes and stuff. And he went on and he did it, and he became a fighter pilot for the RAF. And you know, and I remember him writing me this letter, and I thought to myself, you know, to have that much impact on somebody's life is fascinating. And I think, you know, for as martial artists and as an instructor, I think, you know, you have a certain responsibility. Sound like Spider-Man here, don't I? You have a certain responsibility.
Great power,
to pass over to them, and if you install them good ethics into them children, then, you know, they could become better people. And, you know, what we need in society is better people. So that's all I try to do.
Yeah, fantastic. And how long have you been teaching kind of full time for now then?
20 years. So about 20 years.
A lot of kids there, I'm sure, that have gone on.
You know, I've had fighters. I've had all kinds of kids. You know, and you see them sort of excelling and going off into their own fields, and you know, and it's nice when they remember you, and they say, you know, and you know, obviously since gangs come out, I've had thousands. You know, and it's dead nice, and it's dead sweet, because like there's some students that are coming back that I haven't spoken to for years, and you know you're reconnecting with them, and they're like, oh, it's just amazing, and you know, so you know, 20 years of doing this professionally as a professional martial arts instructor, and the thousands of people's sorts of lives that you've had a shining influence in. You know, it's been nice. It's a great privilege to be able to do what we do.
Definitely, yeah. Let's move on to the movie side of things then, and the TV and the acting and the stunts and things like that. How did that all begin then?
Well, 2005, I went over to Los Angeles, went over to LA. Before I was going, all I wanted to go to LA for was to train. You know, you had like Simon Ree, Philip Ree, you had Benny the Jet, Baz Rutten, all our places out there. 2005, the kids won't remember this, but when we used to have the internet, there used to be a dial-on tone. So, I basically send these emails out to Benny's gym, Sensei Benny's gym and stuff, and I was like, you know, I'd like to come and train when I'm out there, if I can use the facilities and stuff. And they were like, yeah, it's fine. So as soon as I landed into LA, I got into my hotel, first thing, ringing his gym. Can I come? Yeah, come down tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and just do some training. So I turned up and I think it was in West Hollywood at his gym, the Jets gym there. And I go in and, for me, I just wanted to go to get pictures. So it's like, there's Benny's gym, me standing outside, thumbs up with the thing up. And I thought, this is what I want. And me like posing on a bag, smiling and stuff. And the girl I was with at the time, she come along with me to do all my photography.
Yeah, nice.
They take the pictures and stuff. So we go in there and I sort of like, I met Cody on reception. Then I felt like he was sort of interviewing me. He asked me those questions. And the one thing I never did is I never went with me gear the first day. Okay. Because I didn't want to be that guy, like, hey, I've come to train. I didn't I'm really respectful and stuff. So I turned up and they were like, oh, have you got your gear with you? And I was like, no. And they were like, oh, it's okay. So they took me out back to like this shop that they had, let me pick out some kit. And then I come back in, they give me a set of gloves. And then I just started, like, I was in a bag room, I was in the bags and stuff. And then a woman knocked on the window. And I opened, because the bag room was like, it was hard to say. It was like a conservatory thing, with the bags in the stuff.
Sure, yeah.
So I opened the window and it was Sensei Sarah, it was Benny's wife, and she's like, hi, blah, blah, blah. So then I thought of it, like, she was asking me questions. I thought, I feel like I can get interviewed here. Like, this is like part 2 of my interview.
Yeah.
So she's like, it's nice to meet you. You move really well. And I was like, oh, thank you. So then she goes off. She comes back and she's like, Sensei Benny's coming back. He wants to meet you. So I'm like,
oh my God.
I'm like, Benny the Jet wants to meet me. I'm like, really? So anyway, like, I'm like a kid in the sweet shop, my head's spinning. I don't know what's going to go on. I'm like, I'm going to meet Benny the Jet,
Fangirling hard.
Yeah, I was like, Wheels on Meals is probably like one of the greatest fight scenes to ever take place between Benny and Jackie. And, and so I went in, got showered, come out. Sure enough, Sensei Benny comes in, hugs me, and then we sat down and we talked. I reckon it was close to 3 hours. Wow. He just sat at the front of the thing. And then he turned around to me at the end of it, he's like, hey Lee, what are you doing whilst you're here? And I was like, I've got nothing planned. So he says to Cody, sort of like, write down the address for tomorrow. Gives me this address and he's like, be here 9 a.m. So I was like, okay. Didn't ask what it was. I'm not going to ask. Benny the Jet, I'm going to be there.
Yeah.
So we go away, and the next morning, get in a cab. So we go to Santa Monica and Fairfax, and I'm at the Lee Strasberg. So I go in. I'm in the Lee Strasberg Film Institute. Acting, top actors in the world to train there. And I'm sat there, and I'm just like, and I'm like, the girlfriend's looking at me, go, "What's going on here?" It's like, I haven't got a clue. So next thing I go in, like, I've got my bag with me. We go in. And like, there was stunt guys there that were working on Spider-Man at the time and stuff like this. And then next thing, Benny's like, we've got a guest who's going to join us for a few weeks, several weeks. Just start doing bits, and and then I just started doing little bits there with Benny. And once I finished my trip in LA, he said to me, "That's it now." He said, "You're part of my stunt team, and like, I want you to be my ambassador for the UK and stuff like this." And I thought, oh, that's a nice gesture. It's a nice way to finish. I didn't really think anything of it.
Sure.
The phone went in the dojo because I was going to Vegas and then up to Seattle after that.
Yeah.
The phone goes in the dojo, and they're like, it's for you. I'm like, who's calling me? And I'm in Hollywood. Who's phoning me? But it was Shannon Lee, Bruce Lee's daughter.
Yeah.
Because they were friends, and obviously I was going to Seattle to pay my respects to Bruce Lee. So all this happened, and then he said, you're going to be this thing. So I finished the rest of my trip off in the States, and I come back to the UK, and I think it must have been about 2 to 3 weeks after. And the phone goes in the house, and next thing I'm like, I get this phone. It's like, Lee, the phone for you. And I'm like, who is it? And like, that's when we used to have phones in the house that were plugged in.
With like a wire, yeah?
With wire, yeah. Just for people that didn't know. So, and I was like, she was like, it's Benny. And I was like, Benny who? And she was like, Benny the Jet. And I was like, wow. So I come onto the phone and I was like, hi, Sensei. And he's like, hey, he goes, we're coming to the UK. We're doing a movie. What are you doing for the next couple of months? And I was like, well, just apart from work, nothing. He's like, can you get the time off and stuff? So I was like, yeah, no problem. Work wouldn't give me the time off, so I quit. It was just, it's a no-brainer, being given sort of, you know, something that you've worked to and you know, you've done hard. So I started working on a movie with Sensei Benny. I started training the lead actor. And then this happened several times. I went over to Bulgaria. We did a movie over in Bulgaria. And then I had a bit of a time out from filming. Had a bit of I had some personal stuff going on. Got married, divorced, as you do. And I had this break, and then it was about I'm gonna go 7 or 8 years ago. I got a phone call off Joey Anza, who played Desh in Bourne. And Joey, sorry, I got a message off him. Joey messaged me, and he's like, you know, I want you to we're doing Green Street 3. You know, would you like to come on board? We're doing it with Scott Adkins and blah blah blah. You know, we'll give you a fight with Scott. And I was like, yeah, you know, wow, yeah, you know,
sign me up.
Great, you know, it'll be brilliant. So we went down, did that, and then you know, I got to work with Scott. Me and Scott did this fight scene in Green Street 3. I actually take 2 full hits. I take a kick to the head. Only because we were meant to film. We were filming in slow motion, and the way it was being filmed with the frames that was up, you know, you'd see it wasn't him. Sure. And they were like, "What do you want to do?" And I was just like, just kick me in the head."
Take one for the team.
Yeah, you know, you do, you know. And I was like, so we did it, and then from there, you know, I just seemed to make an impression with a film producer that was working on Green Street, who then cast me in another movie. And then it just started. I started picking up pace within the industry, and I started getting my name round. And obviously, once you get yourself an agent and you start going into auditions and having auditions and stuff, I just, you know, I think I'm like, I love film, love it. I'm a massive geek, a massive film geek. You know, I'm obsessed with film. I've been obsessed with film since I was a kid. So when I'm there and I have the opportunity to be able to perform every time I'm on set, you know, I feel privileged to be there. It's completely privileged to be there. You know, sometimes trying to keep your shit together is really hard. You know, you've got these like actors, and you know, Gary Oldman, you know, working on Gangs of London with Gareth, you know, the director of The Raid. You know, just amazing, you know, master the DP for it, you know, and obviously Olga, you know, fighting Dave Bautista in Final Score. You know, it's like, so you're sort of there, and it's, you know, you're as professional as you can be, but the film geek that's inside of me is going, woo! so you know, having that opportunity to be able to perform, and also another transition from the martial arts to film is completely different. It's like everything you have ever been taught in your martial arts goes out the window, and film fighting is a completely different art within itself. And that, you know, and I think again, you know, being a student all the time, and you know, I always see myself as a student rather than as this like big high instructor. I'm a student of the art. I'm a student of martial arts. I'm a student of film and acting, and I just like to watch and observe and just learn, and having the opportunity to be around sort of like the people that I have, and like being at the pinnacle of their careers and seeing them to get to do what they do is just phenomenal.
Amazing. What's it like to actually be on set then? So for the minute you walk in, what's like a typical day like? Or is there a typical day?
Yeah, no, I think every day is different. I mean, you know, I'll tell you, when I was on Gangs, so the fight, the scene on Gangs.
Yeah, how did Gangs come about?
Well, obviously I'd worked with Jude Poyer before. You know, absolutely phenomenal fight coordinator and stunt coordinator. And he choreographed the fight between me and Dave Bautista with Chris Webb in Final Score. So they knew what I was capable of, and I'd done a few other things with Jude before, and we become, you know, we're friends and stuff. And I had an audition in London for a Guy Ritchie movie in the morning, and then I had the audition for Gangs in the afternoon. So I went for the audition for Gangs, and obviously I knew it was with Gareth and stuff, and you know, I was nervous. You know, you know, I've got to do this performance and stuff, and we went in, and I knew it would be a physical audition, because I'd sort of like been sort of semi-briefed on, you know, what the character was, what it was doing, sort of not fully understood what the scene was about, but been given a little breakdown. And so we went in, and the guys in there, you know, Andy, Craig, and then they, Andre's in there as well, and Jude, and they sort of like went through a little bit of the choreography and stuff. So it's like, okay, so we did a little bit of choreography, and I went through it, and then it was like, I thought I'd been told I was getting stripped down to my pants. So it wasn't a weird audition.
It's that kind of audition, yeah.
So I stripped down to my boxer shorts, and I had a pair of boots on and stuff. And at that time, I was in really good nick.
Yeah.
And Gareth, you know, obviously wanted to come. They had, you know, the director has a vision of how they want this character to look and stuff. And he said to me, you know, if it comes down to it, will you be able to put weight on for the scene? You know, we want you to look like this monstrosity, this big, you know, like the way a silverback gorilla looks, you know, big shoulders, chest, but then there's like a, you know, the belly's always a little bit rounded. So I was like, yeah, you know, whatever it takes. And then obviously I went away, and, you know, I thought to myself, you know, I was all right there. I did a decent, you know, performance, and I was putting it in, and I took direction and stuff. And then it was a couple of, I think it might have been a month or 2 months later. And then obviously I got the phone call to say that I got the part and stuff. And then prep went into the role itself, and I put 2 stone on for the role. Obviously put the weight on, and I just sort of like cut my cardio down a little bit.
Yeah, did you struggle with that? As someone that's used to your routine, used to your diet, I'd imagine used to your training plan.
You know what?
Motivated guy.
Yeah, I think I struggled more on set because I was body conscious, and obviously I'm in my underpants, and I've got this weight on, and because you're not used to that weight, I think I struggled more with that.
I mean, feel a little bit unnatural.
Yeah, and then obviously, you know, excuse me, your sense of attention, you and the star, and then obviously Men's fantastic stunt guy. You know, you're there, and you know, and the whole thing's on you, and you know you're going to perform. And all I think, like, when you're not used to like that weight,
yeah, like,
you know, it can have like sort of a little bit of a psychological effect on you.
A little
bit detrimental.
Yeah.
And the whole time I was sort of, but then I just switched off from that. You know, just like, I think the first day I was in my underpants was for everyone that's seen it, was the initial scene where Elliot comes in and I'm counting, putting the cash in the bag and stuff.
Yeah.
And then, you know, obviously you just put it aside in the end. You know, it's like fighting, isn't it? Everything, when you go into a fight, you can't go in with anything else except that fight and vision in your head. And I use the same attitude to when I perform and when I go on. You know, I totally switch off from the fact that there's other people around. And at that particular moment, I am that person. I am in that scene and in that character. But yeah, I mean, you know, a typical day on set on there, it was hard. It was hard. I'm not
long hours.
Yeah, it was. You know, I was probably doing 10 hour shoots.
Yeah.
I think we did like 5 days initially, and then we did some pickups. Yeah. And it's like keeping that intensity up as that character and being that aggressive. And you know, what people have got to understand is that even though that, I mean, it's not sure fight. It's a long fight in terms of you know, screen time and everything that we're doing. And you've got that performance in, so it's not just like going da-da-da-da. You've got like them dramatic performances in between as well, where obviously Len's lost his shit and he's gone psycho, and and the energy level sort of lifts each time that I'm on it. And they didn't want me to just go explode and go full psycho. They wanted me to sort of step it up each time. Yeah, so every time that Elliot, I'd just get more and more annoyed the fact that he just wasn't dying, or he wasn't, you know, it was like, but then trying to stay within that moment, and you sort of like, you just have to you have to be there. You have to sort of like keep in that character, and you sort of, you know, try not to break that mold. So because as soon as you lose the energy, if I lose energy, the first people that pick it up are the viewers. Yeah. And then all of a sudden something just doesn't become real. And I think within that, you know, I knew more than anything, I knew my capabilities as a performer in terms of the martial arts and stuff, because you know, I've done it every day, and I know that, you know, my main thing to me was my performance as this psychopath and making it believable that when everyone watches it, they didn't know what was going to happen. You know, it was like, geez, you know, where's this going to go?
Yeah, you did a good job of it, mate. I've got to say, it was brutal. It was gritty, wasn't it? It was probably one of the grittiest kind of fight sequences or things that I've seen, definitely on TV.
Yeah.
Was it different to some of the stuff that you worked on before in terms of?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I mean, you know, like I said before, you're working with Gareth Evans and you're working with Matt Flannery. You know, both these guys, for me, revolutionised martial arts movies for when the Raid come out.
Yeah.
You know, they just raised the bar completely, and I think, you know, with the action that Jude has put in, you know, Jude's Puya, you know, with these guys, and you look at this TV series, the bar's been raised so high. You know, like, it's massively raised so high. I think everyone that's watched this just gone, oh my god. You know, you look at episode 5. You know, the you know, the house. You know, where
epic, just epic.
You know, it's just like, you know, you just don't get that on TV. No. And it's you know, it all comes down to these guys, and it comes down to, you know, for the work ethic that they've come, and the way the cinematography is. You know, that fight, like that I did. You know, there's some camera angles that I was there when he made it, and I remember watching it thinking, "Wow, you know, how was that going on?" But you know, I mean, Matt and Gareth are just geniuses at what they do. You know, and the relationship they have, and the understanding of how each other work. You know, it was just mind blowing to watch them two in action as well. And then obviously, you know, the people that you're on set with, you know, like I said before, men's was Choppe's stunt double. So there was no wires in that, by the way.
All right.
Yeah. So when you see him flying through the air and hit the wall, he actually just got through him through.
That was a good old thud as well on that wall.
Yeah, and hit the wall, and then the bit where I throw him over my head.
Yeah.
That's just me throwing him over my head. So there was nothing in that. Everything was us, and and I think that's why it felt the way it did. And also, funny story, I turned up for rehearsals, and I got met by Jude. So Jude pulls me aside with Chris Webb, and they both go, right, they don't want you to be friendly with Choppe.
Right.
So I was like, right, okay. I was like, you know, in what terms? And they're like, you know, we want you to keep this awkwardness between us. So I was like, right, okay. So I was like, oh, all right. So then, if you ever meet Choppe, he's the most charismatic guy. He's a gentleman. He's just an amazing guy. He's an amazing actor. And it was hard to try and keep that up all the time. So I'd just cut him short in conversations and walk away, because that's how. But I think I understand completely why they did it, because that transgresses onto screen, and it's sort of like you sort of have that moment where no one really understands like what's going on between us, and he's sort of like a little bit edgy because I've been standoffish. You know, so it adds to that fear factor. And I always remember when you told me, I always remember the story Benny told me years ago. And he said that when him and Jackie Chan worked on Wheels on Meals, Jackie Chan told Benny they were going to have a fight at the end of filming.
Mm-hmm.
So in Benny's head, the whole way through filming, he thought that they were going to have this match up at the end.
Yeah.
So I think that's why when you see that fight and that intensity, that
translates.
So obviously for me, when Jude said this, I had this in my head, and I remember Benny telling me the story and stuff, and it was hard. Excuse me, it was hard because, as I say, you know, the guy is, you know, he walks into a room and he's just so charismatic. He's just got something. I think he's destined for major things. He's a phenomenal actor, and it's hard to be that like that. I was a bit of a knob, if I'm honest. You know, like that sort of. So when we finished filming, And we're there, and so I come up, and everyone gives me this like big claps and stuff like this, and I've never had that. And I was like, oh wow, you know.
Yeah.
And then me and Choppe had this moment. He come up to me, he's like, oh, and I went, listen. I said before we go any further, I was like, I was actually told to be a bit dingo.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I goes, I wondered why. He said, I could see you speaking to everyone else, and then with me, and I was thinking, am I upset?
What have I done? Yeah, yeah.
Have I done something wrong? But I think that added to that, and then obviously when you see the final product, which everyone's now been quite fortunate enough to see in the UK. So I don't think it's out in the US or the rest of the world until July. You know, as I say, the response has just been, you know, mind blowing for me. Absolutely mind blowing. I had Scott Atkins text me yesterday as well. He was saying about it and stuff, and you know, when you're getting the people that you look up to messaging you and saying, you know, you've done well and stuff, you know, it's nice.
Good little pat on the back.
Yeah, it's a nice moment, because, you know, you just sort of, everything you do, you aspire for it to be memorable, and you hope that you give the audience what it is that they want to see.
Make your mark.
Yeah, it is, and I think, you know, Len has left his wellies and his underpants in everyone's mind.
Definitely, yeah. I can't wait till Halloween next year. Or this year. I'm sure there's going to be a few Lens walking around.
There's got to be. I mean, I'm going to get me and my son dressed up.
It'll all be post-lockdown bodies as well, so everyone will already be there. It'll be fine.
Brilliant.
What's for the future then? What's the plans for the next year? Everything's obviously, I suppose, been a little bit put on hold for now.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I mean, for me, you know, in terms of my martial arts and stuff, you know, I want to start expanding and stuff, and like maybe franchising the school off, and in terms of put my system out there for other people to take on board and to learn, and for me to be the head of it. In terms of the films and stuff, you know, just see what's next. You never know what's around the corner. I've just worked on something that was really, really phenomenal for me to do. I can't say what it is.
Tease.
Yeah. So, but everyone will see. You know, you get your dream jobs, and I've just managed to have a little bit of that before lockdown. You know, for me, I'm grateful to work on anything. You know, to have the opportunity. You know, I seem to be at a point in my career now where, you know, you continue to work hard, you continue to push forward. You know, there's so many outstanding guys out there, and performers, and, you know, actors and stuff. You know, and it's always good to be kept on your toes and to be pushing forward. You know, I'm not getting any younger, so I needed to make my mark, and hopefully Len has left a vision in everyone's mind now. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's just unfortunate that we're in the time that we're in at the moment. I imagine once this is all done and dusted, there'll be a lot of other things on the horizon. You know, for everyone. You know, I want that for everyone. I think at the end of this, everyone really needs to focus in on the dreams and push forward and making them happen. You know, that's the key principle for everyone, and you know, myself included. You know, for me, my life is good, but, you know, it's my whole life's about my boy. You know, and I'm making sure that I want to have success for him to have stability. So that's my overall goal for the future, is to ensure that, you know, he has the best possible chances in life that he can have through my success, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Thank you so much, Lee. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you as always, mate. So yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Take care.
Okay, thank you. Bye.